you all so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. It's so funny. A couple of months ago, when Katie and the team asked me to present on this topic, I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. My friends and family that are not in the recruiting world, they know all I do is tell them, like, they'll come to me, right? Because I've been a recruiter for about 15 years now. And so when my friends or family are, going through the interview process, they'll always ask me, like, what do I do? What do I not do? And aside from all the do's and don'ts that I tell them, the one thing I always say is negotiate your salary, always negotiate your salary. And so I have, friends and family that have come to me after, receiving a job offer or getting a job. And they're like, I took your tips. I got $7,000 more than they offered me. And I'm like, you see, it works, right? So I'm super excited to hopefully share some of my tips and tricks that I've done in my career. I'll start out by saying, these are not foolproof methods, right? Some companies cannot go up in salary. I would say, especially, I know a lot of you are going to be, joining an entry level positions, especially if it's part of like a program where they're bringing in 30 grads, right, in a specific year, all in the same position, all in the same location. There may not be as much flexibility in salary for a role like that, right? Because they want to bring everyone in exactly the same. No one has experience, right? So if they're paying 55 for Jim, they want to pay 55,000 for Sarah, etc., and not have inequity. But as you go on in your career, you'll notice that the flexibility in salary really does become more variable, more flexible. So hopefully these tips and tricks, if not, your first job out of college, throughout your career will help a little bit. So the first thing that I think is super important to talk about is you should not be waiting to hear what the salary is or talk about the salary until you're given an offer, right? Salary conversations should be happening very, very early on in the process. Any recruiter or manager that refuses to discuss salary with you, I'm telling you as a recruiter, is a huge red flag. And so, you don't want to waste their time going through 6 interviews and then you realize this salary doesn't meet my needs. You don't want to waste your own time going through 6 interviews only to find out that it's so far off from what you need to make work, right? We all have our own situations in life. We have kids, we have marriages, you live in a high price city, you need a certain, whatever it is, you should know upfront at least a range, right? It doesn't have to be, if you're in your head, you're like, I need 55,000, and they say, our range is between 50 and 60,000. It shouldn't be a deal breaker that, they're a little bit lower on the lower end, but you want to make sure you're in the same ballpark, right? Hopefully in your careers, at some point you're going to be looking for 100,000, 150,000. I have faith in all of you. And, if they're looking to pay between 70 and 80, when you're already making 100,000 and you really need that or want that, or feel like you deserve that, you should know that very early on because you don't want to waste your time, right? So I haven't come across many recruiters that don't want to talk about salary early on, but I have come across some. And to me, it's a huge red flag. To me, it says there's a reason that they don't want to talk about it. Again, if it's your dream job and you're like, I'm really willing to take a salary cut or, whatever it is to take this job, you may want to continue the conversation, but have it in the back of your head that there may be a reason, and maybe that you should set your expectation that they might be on the lower end when you get to the salary, portion or the offer portion of that conversation. So, I'll say that. And then I'll also say, and I know it takes confidence, and I didn't always do it early on in my career, but don't be scared to bring up salary during your initial call. Normally, 99 out of 100 times, your first call for a job is going to be a phone screen with a recruiter, right? Before you get to a manager, you're probably going to talk to a recruiter first. They're going to do a preliminary phone screen. And I would advise all of you to make sure at some point during that call, salary is touched upon at least generally, right? It doesn't have to be, this is what we're going to offer you, but in general terms, right? I would say wait until the end of the call. You don't want to be too aggressive, right? So it's not, hi, I'm recruiter Jane, let's talk about this position. And you immediately say, well, what's the salary, right? You want to hear a little bit more about the role first. You want to hear about the company. You want to hear the location. Is it in a big city, as opposed to a suburb or a rural area? That is going to make what you need for salary, differ, right? Are you going to be traveling really far? Like, is it an hour away or is it 5 minutes away? That will play into how much you want in your salary. So I would say, let that first initial call happen. But if they don't bring it up by the end of the call, I would advise all of you to bring it up, right? And so you can say something as simple as, I'm really excited in this position. I'm really eager to move on, in next steps. Before we go any further, do you have a salary range in mind for this opportunity? And at that point, again, most recruiters, even if they hadn't been the one to bring it up, will provide that range at that point. And again, if they're really, really reluctant, again, to me, it says red flag. And then at that point, you really have to decide, or at least keep in mind that this may be something that you need to, think about throughout the process and really consider, if it's your dream job and if you're willing to, at the end of the day, make concessions where they might be a little bit lower. So any questions here at all? I'll pause after each slide so we can see if anybody has any questions. All right.
So far, no.
All right, so just some initial tips for the initial salary conversation, right? So if a recruiter says to you, what are you looking for, right? That's the ideal. The recruiter in that initial conversation, towards the end of that call, they're going to bring up salary and say, hey, what are you looking for? What do you need to make a move? What salary range do you want? They'll phrase it in many, many different ways. And so I would say, and many, many people do this, right? They'll be like, oh, I'm open, and they don't want to give a number. And I get it from the candidate side, right? Because as many times as I've been a recruiter, I've been a candidate as well. You can look at my LinkedIn. I've been at many jobs over my 15-year career at different companies, and I've gotten, more offers than companies I've even been at, right? That I've turned down or whatever. And so, try to come up with a range, a bare minimum, give what you need, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But I would say, don't just say I'm open, right? Because no one is really that open, right? You're not going to work for 30 cents an hour, right? So like, I'm open means like, I'll just take anything. No one really will take anything. You always have a bottom line, right? Of something that you need to be able to make it work. So give them something, right? I personally try to stick with a range, and I always make sure. So if I'm looking for between 50 and 60,000, I always make sure to always add a little tidbit in to mention that, on the lower end really is going to depend on benefits, paid time off, all of the other perks, right? And I think that really sets the stage with the recruiter of, you're looking for 50 to 60, but if the benefits are low, if the paid time off is low, if it doesn't have a lot of really good benefits, you're probably not going to accept that 50, right? But maybe they have amazing benefits. They're free, unlimited PTO, all of these things that also cost, they cost things, right? And so maybe you'd be a little bit more flexible to go on the lower end of that 50 to 60 range if all of the other things, all of the other benefits and perks really measure up, right? And so I say that because sometimes when you don't put that out there, when the recruiter hears 50 to 60, they're like, bing, they'll accept 50. That's what we're going to go with. And again, you might accept 50 if you're getting all of these other really great things, but you probably wouldn't accept 50 if their benefits are expensive or it's really far from work and you're going to be traveling really far or whatever it is, right? So that's why you provide a range, because until you know all of those other components that make up your total compensation, as opposed to just the number salary, you really don't know where you're going to fall in that range, right? And so, also keep in mind, a lot of recruiters, when they do their offers, they'll want to meet you in the middle, right? So you say 50 to 60, and they're like, oh, I'll offer 55 because, we're not giving the bare minimum, but, we're not stretching ourselves either to go at the top end. So we're going to meet right in the middle. So I would just advise you, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but keep that in mind when you're giving your range, that's a possibility, right? So if you really, really, under no circumstances are ever going to take that low range, then bump it up a little bit, right? Don't pigeonhole yourself and give a number that at the end of the day is never going to be realistic. So give a range that makes sense, and that really then within that range is going to be dependent on all of those other factors that hopefully you'll learn more about throughout the process. And then the last tip that I will say, and this is for you guys really, if you are ever asked your current salary, I would reply back with, in order to make a move, I would need between 50 and 60,000. It is illegal in some states for recruiters, hiring managers, anyone in the hiring process to ask you what your current salary is. However, that's not all states, but it is becoming a bad practice for recruiters to ask you your current salary. So I would avoid the question if you can, and reply back with what you would need to make a move for this position. And people would say, well, why do you do that? Why do you not want to answer that? And the reason really is, it shouldn't matter what you're currently making. If you're underpaid now, and that's a reason for you looking for another job, you don't want to share that salary and then get underpaid again in this job, right? So if you should be making, say, 70,000, right? That's what the market calls for. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a couple of slides. If the market calls for 70,000 and you're getting paid 50 now and you're getting way underpaid, if you share that with the recruiter or the hiring manager, they're going to say, oh, let's pay her 60,000. We're giving a huge bump from what she's originally making, but that's 60,000. You're still underpaid from where you should be in the market, right? So it shouldn't matter what you're currently making. You should be focused on what this position calls for, what the market calls for, what your skill set calls for this particular job. And it really shouldn't matter what you've made in the past. So that's a tip. Again, I don't know about Pennsylvania, but I know a lot of states it's becoming even illegal for recruiters to ask, and they keep adding states, as the years go on, but it's just a really bad practice. So I would say, recommend not even to answer the question, kind of flip it and use this verbiage here. So you're telling them what you really need to make in order to make a move. Any questions? Yeah.
I have one question that came through, and I think this is going to be very specific to the industry, job, location, but maybe you have a slide on this, but what would you recommend when a job application asks for a desired salary or salary range? I think maybe the question is more, how can I find what I need to put for that answer?
Yeah, definitely. And so again, if it's asking for your desired salary, definitely put that. If it's asking for your current salary, I usually skip over those questions, in all honesty. And yes, I'm going to get to it, and I think it's the next slide or the slide after, about how what salary is recommended to the position.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so you've gone through the interview process. Hopefully you've talked about salary in the beginning. Hopefully that conversation comes up more than just that initial conversation, especially if my interview process as a candidate, especially if my interview process is super long. There may be a time in the middle, right? I'm 3 interviews in, and I still know I have 3 more interviews left, and it's taking over, a month, which hopefully it won't, but sometimes it does. If I'm talking to that recruiter maybe a couple of weeks in, I may say at that point, hey, just want to make sure we're still in the right range. We're still in the same ballpark. Again, my salary needs are between, 50 and 60,000. Is that still in the range, right? Because sometimes they start meeting with candidates, it could be a new position. And then they start to think about our salary that we mentioned early on in the process might no longer be the salary that we're willing to pay, right? Or say, everybody else is looking for 40,000 when you're looking for 60,000. Again, recruiters, they're people too. Hiring managers are people. They may say, well, we have all these other candidates for 40,000. So what, we're not going to pay, Mary Sue 60,000. So I would encourage you, throughout that process, again, it doesn't have to be every conversation. I wouldn't recommend for it to be every conversation, but if a couple of weeks have passed and you've gone through a couple of interviews, just a quick check-in with the recruiter to make sure that you're still on the same page. Because if she then comes to you and says, actually, we thought about it, we don't have the budget for 50 to 60, we're going to pay $40,000 for this role, then at that point, you have to make a decision. Is this right for me to continue? Is that something that I can accept, that I will accept? And you might at that point decide, you know what, I have other companies that I'm interviewing with that also meet my needs and also meet my salary requirements. I've decided that I'm not going to continue on. And you, of course, have every right to do that. So I would say, continue on in that process and, make sure that, you're getting what you need as well. Okay, so we've gone through the interview process. Everything was amazing. They loved you. You loved them. Now we've gotten to the offer, right? So this is the good stuff. You've gotten an offer. Congratulations to all of you. And so once you're presented with the full package, right? So they may give you a salary. They say, hey, you're amazing. We're going to pay you $65,000. I would never accept a position without seeing the full benefits package in addition to that salary, right? So when they call you up, hopefully they say, hey, Jennifer, you're getting 65,000. I would follow up with, are you able to send me the benefits information so I can take a look, and then I'll get back to you, hopefully by the end of today, this week, whatever it is, with a decision, right? Because again, every company's benefits are going to be completely different. Some are completely free. Some make you pay hundreds of dollars a month. Some people offer 2 weeks vacation. Some companies offer 5 weeks vacation. All of these things have a price, right? They may not be a dollar amount price, but they cost something to you. Does the company offer a 401k? Does the company offer a pension plan? This is money that they're giving you in addition to your salary, right? So 50,000 at one company may not be equal to 50,000 at another company if company A is giving you all of this other stuff on top of it and company B is not giving you anything, right? Company A, all of a sudden, their 50,000 is worth a lot more. So all of that is to say, look at the full package before you make a decision. And once you've looked at that, you've looked at everything, you've reviewed the benefits, the vacation time looks good. If you then still feel that the salary is too low, negotiate. And so I personally, and I say 100%. So my first job out of college, I didn't negotiate, but every job since then, and that's been like 10 to 15 offers that I've gotten. I didn't accept all of them, obviously, but probably in the course of my career, probably 15 offers that I've gotten, I've negotiated 100% of those offers. And I actually did a count back with a friend of mine. And so roughly 75% of all of the offers that I have countered, my counter was either accepted or some increase was provided. So if they offered 50 and I said, I want 60, they went with 55. So something. So only about a quarter of the time did they say, absolutely not. We're not increasing it, a dollar above what we've offered you. And so I think everyone's fear, and it's rational, right? It makes sense. They are hesitant or scared or feel fearful or nervous to ask for more money because the fear is, what if they pull the offer? What if they think I'm greedy and they don't want to work with me anymore? I can tell you personally, I have never had a job offer rescinded, which is that they, pulled the offer for asking for more money or countering the offer or negotiating, whatever we want to call it, right? I've never had that happen. I've never worked for a company that does that. I am not saying that that does not exist, right? So I don't want to say there's no way that they can do that. Legally, the company can pull the offer. So there's nothing that legally says that they can't do that. Would a company do that? Again, in my experience, I haven't seen it, but it's possible. Personally, I wouldn't want to work for a company that pulled the offer just because you asked a question, right? So again, it's not a foolproof method. I never really see it happen, but could it happen? It could. I think a lot of it is all in how you phrase it, right? So you don't want to come across too aggressive. You don't want to come across like you're not really interested in the role and you're just looking for money. I mean, you really want to make sure that you are phrasing in a way that you're being professional and it's coming across appropriately. And so when you're negotiating your offer, right, you really, you don't want to just say, thanks for 50,000, but I really want 60,000, or thanks for 50,000, but I really need 60,000, right? Because what case are you proving? You're not really proving anything. And so come with a reason or reasons that warrant that amount, right? So they've offered you 50,000. You really think or feel or need whatever. It can be for a million different reasons that you need 60,000 in order to make this work. So you would come back to them, first thank them, of course, let them know how excited you still are, right? Again, you don't want to make it seem like you're all about the money, but the money is important, right? The money is as important as the company, as the manager, as the job you're doing. It's not the only important thing, and it's not the most important thing, but it is important, right? And so you have every right to go back to the recruiter, hopefully that's offering you this opportunity, and say, thank you so much. I am so excited. Again, I think conveying excitement throughout the entire interview process, that's another thing that I always tell people, like, make sure you seem excited throughout the entire process, because if you don't seem like you're interested in the job, they lose interest in you very quickly. But that's another topic. And so, thank them, just tell them how excited you are, tell them how much you appreciate the offer, and then go in with, based on my skill set of XYZ, I feel that this position really warrants $60,000. Is it possible to be able to make that work? Or based on market data, research that I've done for this position, especially if it's a new role for you, right? Or it's not something you've done before and you don't have a lot of experience, in the salary range for that opportunity, right? Like you're not just, I'm not a recruiter going to another company for a recruiter, and it's like, I just know how much I should make, right? These websites here, PayScale, Glassdoor, there's other ones. So if you want to do a Google, but these will tell you, what the salary ranges should be for your position in a certain location with a certain number of years of experience, whatever. They should give you a good gauge, right? And I'll say that not all companies, it's not apples to apples, right? So I've been a recruiter for 15 years and not every company pays the same, right? It's even could be different in the same location, right? A smaller company might pay different than a larger company. A company that's doing well financially might pay better than a company that's not, right? So again, it's not foolproof. Like not every recruiter in Philadelphia is going to get the exact same salary, but these websites should give you a good idea of if their offer is super, super low. And that happens sometimes, right? Especially for companies that maybe are a little bit smaller, not as established. Sometimes they're just paying what they think they should be paying, or, what they had the budget to pay. And it can be totally off from what they should be paying you. And so these are just some, different ways that you can phrase it. And at the end of the day, it also could just be what you need to make it work, right? If you're already making $65,000, you may not want to accept a position for 50,000. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I've actually accepted positions for less money than I was currently making, because Again, the benefits were better. The distance from my home, the commute was going to save me, 2 hours per day. I liked the company better. It was a bigger company that I felt I was going to grow. So you might be able to accept an offer for less than you're currently making, but only you will know that at the end of the day. And if you are just not able to make it work, or furthermore, if you don't think it's worth it to leave your current company for less money or whatever the salary that this new company is offering you, again, that's your prerogative, right? But again, I think, coming at them with, some reasoning and a basis for that reasoning, referring to, market data or research that you've done on salaries for similar positions in your area are, paying roughly 70,000, can we get a little bit closer to that? Oftentimes it's going to happen. And again, I know I said it, like, stay confident, stay positive. Again, thank them for the opportunity. Make sure that they know that you're still interested and that the salary is not the only thing that you're interested in, but that it is important to you. But again, be confident. You will get your point across much better if you come at it with, facts and figures and confidence. You don't want to be aggressive or overly confident where you're coming across as, cocky or aggressive, right? But you don't want to be timid and be nervous while you're asking this, or at least don't appear to be. You could be nervous on the inside as long as no one else knows. You want to have that, like, fine balance of confidence where, they're like, okay, this person has done their research and it makes sense. So that's what I would recommend here. Anybody have any questions about this portion? Hope that answered the question before about, how you find out about, market data.
Absolutely. Thank you. Currently no questions in the Q&A.
All right. And so this is just to give you a little, it's all well and good hearing me say it, right? But there was a famous study done by someone named Linda Babcock for a book, and it revealed all of the research that she had done that only 7% of females negotiated their salary, their first salary, while 57% of men did. Right. And so of those people who negotiated, so the 7% of women, 57% of men, they were able to, on average, increase their salary by 7%. Now think about that. Think about over the course of your career. If you never negotiate your salary, say you change jobs 10 times in your career, right? We're all, retirement age is getting pushed more and more. So say 10 jobs, probably more. I probably had almost that much and, way away from retiring. But think about if every time you negotiate, you get about 7%. Over the course of your career, think about how much money you're leaving on the table if you never just even ask the question. I mean, I was doing the rough amount for my own, and just in my 15, so I've been out of college in the working world for 15 years this year. I graduated in 2007, and I have countered almost $40,000 during that 15 years. So I would be making, if I never asked for more, $40,000 less than I'm making now. I need that $40,000. I want it. I deserve it. You guys all deserve it. And so, when you think about it, it doesn't feel like a lot in the moment, right? When you're asking for an extra 5,000, like, oh, 5,000, not make or break. But when you look at the course of a career and how much money you're leaving on the table by just not asking the question, it becomes a lot of money. Like, think about how much more in retirement you'll have just by all of that money. So it's kind of amazing. Again, I think this also points out here that females are typically not as confident to ask the question. And so I would advise you, male, female, I think, again, 100% of the time, or maybe sometimes, they blow you away with their salary and you don't ask them. But most of the time, I would say, ask the question, pose the question, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Again, not all of the time, right? Even 25% of the time it didn't work for me, and that was fine. But all of the times that it did work for me, if I hadn't asked, I wouldn't have gotten it. And then I think this is my last slide here. So again, be willing at the end of the day to walk away. Don't drag the conversation out forever, right? So 1 to 2 conversations at the time of offer about salary should suffice, right? So they give you the initial offer, you come with them and say, based on the research that I've done or based on my skill set, whichever, method you're going to pose, can we get it up to 70,000? And so they'll probably say, well, I need to talk to, whomever, the powers that be, and get back to you. So, 2 conversations about it, back and forth, I think are sufficient. But you have to, at some point, if it's not going to work for you, you have to kind of pull the plug, right? And so I would say, know your walk away point going in. So if they've offered you 50,000 and you're countering for 60, know in the back of your head, like, what's realistically the lowest I'm going to take? Don't share them with that, of course, right? Because you want to get the 60,000. But if you're like, you know what, I really want 60,000, but everything else is really good, I'd take it for 56,000. Like, know that in the back of your head, stick to that. And if they will not meet your, walk away point, then just walk away, right? Sometimes recruiting is a lot of sales. We can be persuasive as well. And so don't let a recruiter sell you into doing something that you are not going to be happy with at the end of the day. Again, like I keep saying, salary isn't everything. There are many other things that I think are important, right? And so sometimes taking a lower salary is totally fine and warranted, and you're going to be super happy. But if you know that you are going to be in financial distress or, taking a huge pay cut and it's not going to be worth it, don't let them convince you to take something that's lower than your bottom line. So again, they've offered 50, you're countering for 60. You're like, I would take 56. If they won't get it to your walkaway point, then just thank them. Tell them how appreciative you are. Tell them that, hopefully in the future, you can work together. Like, make sure that you're leaving on really, really good terms. I've had candidates before that just get really upset that we can't make it work. And sometimes, you just can't make it work as a recruiter. Sometimes there's an equity, portion of it that we have to consider with other people in similar roles. Sometimes you just don't have the budget for it. So there's reasons sometimes that a company can't do it. I would say in my experience, it's more that they won't do it than they can't do it. That's why I advise you to counter, because a lot of times they can do it and they will if you ask, but sometimes they just can't, right? And so it's fine. Leave it on good terms, because you know what? In 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, you might cycle back and want to work for that company again. And, if they've put in their notes and their, system that you were, angry or, cursing them out or doing something crazy because they didn't give you, your 60,000, they're not going to want to work with you again. Right. But if you've left it on good terms and, hey, it just didn't happen to work out this time, but hopefully in the future we can work out, maybe 5 years from now, you'll apply for a position. You'll be even more experienced and more seasoned, and they may be in a position at that time to give you the salary that you need. So always leave it on good terms, and be able to walk away and choose a position and a salary that, works for you and makes sense for you. That's everything. Anybody have any questions? I hope this was helpful.
Absolutely, it was very helpful. One thing you might have touched on this a little bit, I just wanted to point out, is recognizing the cost of living and your values and location. I mean, if you get offered 75,000 to work in New York City and 50,000 to work here in State College, it's very comparable to the cost of living to working in New York City, even though it feels like it's $25,000 less. It all comes out in the end. So take advantage of any salary calculators and cost of living calculators you can find as well. And
exactly. And even something I didn't mention, but Katie just reminded me, I mean, especially if you're relocating for the job too, right? Is the company paying for your relocation? Is it something that you're paying out of pocket? Is there a bonus? Also, I didn't mention that, sometimes 50,000, but a 20% bonus is better than 55,000 with no bonus, right? or you might like the guaranteed money. So it all depends on what you want. A company could provide equity, stocks, profit sharing, things that could be worth, good money at the end of the day as well. So, there's so many different things to consider. That's why I mentioned, with all the benefits package, like don't just look at the straight salary. Make sure you know all of the details, everything that they're paying for, everything that's going to cost you out of pocket before you make a decision. Because like we said, salary is not apples to apples in different location, but also, based on different components of the total compensation package, not just the salary.
Absolutely. And every situation is unique, and your situation, your personal decision is very unique, but you're always welcome to schedule an appointment with our office. We could talk through it. It's your decision in the end. So we try not to steer you one way or the other, but it's sometimes good to talk out with someone else to decide what's best. And Jacqueline alluded to this, but some entry-level positions are X salary. That's it. That's what it is. And I've had recruiters share with me that students will then ask for something different once they're offered the position. They've shared that it's been an open book. It's not changing at that point. So just recognize the benefit of the job, or what might happen internally with promotion, but generally those well-marketed salaries are not going to change in the end either. So any questions? Well, thank you all for coming again, and I hope you enjoy this beautiful sunny day. And Jacqueline, thank you for your time. We appreciate our new partnership with Otis this year, and look forward to working with you again in the fall.
Absolutely. And if any of you have any questions or want to talk through a real situation with someone, Katie, please, you can give them my contact information as well. I'm happy to role play with you and kind of, talk out the situation so we can, give you pointers on exactly what to say if you want to negotiate.
Sure.
More than happy to do that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.